Hi, it's Dot from Ink Art Designs. Welcome to our very first stamping tips session. I thought today we might start with how to get a lovely, crisp, clear stamped image right back to the basics. I'm going to explain to you what some of the problems are that people might have, because I've had them, and what some of the solutions might be that would work for you. The first thing you need to do is choose your stamp. Today I'm going to be using the Kingfisher. Look at that, gorgeous, isn't he? From Crafty Individuals, and I chose that one because he has a lot of detail in him, and I just thought it would show the stamping process in a really nice way for you. The next thing you need to do is to match your stamp to your acrylic block. So you don't want a tiny stamp on a big block, because you could end up with unwanted inky areas showing up on your work. So try and match your stamp to the size of your acrylic block. The next thing that you need to do is work on a flat surface. You don't want to work on a surface that has a lot of give in it, like a card table or a fold out table. A nice hard surface. I just have a craft mat with a craft sheet over the top on my kitchen table, and that works fine for me. And that's because you need to have you just need to have that firmness so that your image will stamp out properly. The next thing you need is a really juicy ink pad. Now the ink is important. There's a lot of different inks on the market, we all know that. I find if I stick with archival inks or StazOn, Diversifying Clairs, Diversifying, these types of inks will work well. What won't work really well for a main image would be your water-based inks, and that is because there's a lot of water content in that formula, so they tend to bead up on your stamp right at the very beginning, so you might end up with a beaded look to your stamped image. So to get a nice stamped image, go for the other inks other than water-based inks. Okay, I'm going to take you down to the table and show you the next steps. So we have our stamp matched to our acrylic block. My juiciest ink pad is my India ink at the moment. I've got my flat surface, and I've got some nice smooth white card. And smooth card's important because then I'll get a nice image. If you've got a textured card, it may not pick up all of the stamped image. Then you just tap out the ink onto your stamp. Give it a good tap. Tap it a few times. If you're having trouble in some areas, you can twist your ink on and then tap it smooth. It all depends on what stamp you're using. Always remember to put the lids back on your ink pads. That way they'll stay juicy. So we have our stamped image and we have our card, and we're all ready to go. We simply place it and press firmly. And then you count for, well, you don't have to count, you just have a chat or have a sip of coffee, say hello to a friend, whatever you do, that takes 10 or 20 seconds. What this time does is allows time for the ink to transfer into the card. If you put your stamp down and lift it off within 1 or 2 seconds, there hasn't been enough time. So just be mindful, think about what you're doing and allow the time. Then I like to release and lift. And there we have our gorgeous Kingfisher stamp. How beautiful is he? Sorry about the shadows. Nicely stamped out. There's a lot of detail in that stamp, and that ink is like an archival, so it's picked up the detail quite nicely. Bring you back up here. Right, so the main points are matching your stamp to your acrylic block. Work on the flat surface, it doesn't have a lot of give. Have a juicy ink pad. Save your faded ink pads for other crafting projects. Use a good quality stamp. If you use cheap and nasty ones, you're going to end up with a cheap and nasty result. So always make sure you have good quality. And I think Crafty Individuals are a good quality one. Some of the things I've seen people do in the past is they rock. They put the stamp down, they start rocking. What can happen is that if the ink if the ink catches on the edge of the rubber, when you rock, those bits will come out onto your card. So that's what will happen when you start rocking. No need to rock. The most important part is the time. So allow 10 to 20 seconds, at least, longer if you want to. Release, then lift. Another thing that may happen with your stamping is double images. And that can sometimes happen when you're rocking as well. I'm not an advocate for rocking. It can also be a sign that you've just slapped your stamp down. So I'm going to show you what slapping a stamp looks like. So here we have it. We're going to put some ink on, and we're doing everything correctly. Just putting the ink down, putting the lid back on so it doesn't dry out. Then I'm going to slap it down. All right. That's the good one. You can see there's a lot more detail showing through. Not so much detail showing through on that one, especially around the chest area. A lot more detail on this one. And with other stamp brands, you might find there's even less detail. So it's a little bit blurry. It's not too bad, but that's when you can bounce a stamp and then you end up with the second image showing through. So it can make your eyes go a bit funny. And slapping is something we do without thinking about. If we're in a hurry, you know, you've got to be patient when you're stamping. You've got to enjoy the process. It's all about enjoying the process. And I think when you remember to use a juicy ink pad, a flat surface, flat card, allow the time, match your stamp to your acrylic block, release and lift. The more success you have with your stamping, the more fun you're going to have. I hope that I've answered most of your questions. If you end up with, I'm just looking at my list here, if you end up with a bit of ink going around the edges of your stamp, and I'll do that to show you, I've just put some black ink down here. All you do is grab a paper towel and wipe it off. If it's not there, it's not going to stamp out onto your card. And it's as simple as that. Thank you for joining us for our very first stamping tip. Wish you all the success. I hope that I've solved some of the issues that you might have been having. And I'll see you next Wednesday.